You know, over the years, I have probably interviewed thousands of individuals, but none had ever touched me like the story that we're about to show you. Last year, Justin Hatchett was in a Rover tractor accident. This is his courageous story to recovery.
It was a day about like this. I got up, but it was June the 18th of 2008. We had a lot of hay that we had rolled up, and we were trying to get it in, and get it all rigged up. And so we went over to the other farm, and then we were a mile off of the main road. We were all the way in the back end of the farm. I had to go down a rise and then back up to where we rigged it at, and I went to stop at the top of the hill, and there was still a little dew on the grass, and I went to stop at the top of the hill, and then it didn't stop. It just kept sliding, so I just kept tapping my brakes to get it to stop, and it never did. And so then it just took off down the hill, and I had a load of hay behind me, and the tractor didn't have a roll bar or anything on it, and I slid down the hill, and it slid sideways, and then I looked to jump off, but if I jumped off to the left, then the wagon would run over me. And if I jumped off to the right, the tractor would. And so I just rode it out, and it slid and made it all the way to the bottom. Then it just turned over, and it was about a 12,000-pound tractor, and the back fender landed right underneath my rib cage and mashed me from here down.
Well, I'll never forget getting the call. And the phone rang that morning, and I had thought about not answering it because I was in the garage, and I thought by the time I got to it they would have hung up. But I went ahead to the phone, and it was my mother-in-law, and she was screaming. And she said, "Justin's under the tractor." And I just thought my heart was going to stop. And I hung up the phone and ran out of the house, and as I was running to the car, my husband was running up the driveway. And so from there, we started over there, and the whole time over there, we prayed, and we talked, and we called family and asked them to please hurry. And we tried to stay calm, but we had a very difficult time doing that. And then I'll never forget, as we reached the top of the hill, and we came around, there's an old house on the back of the farm, and as we came around the house, the first thing we saw were the four wheels up in the air. And I immediately knew if the four wheels were up in the air, it wasn't good. Then we saw him laying on the ground, and I thought he was already gone. And the worker that was with him was laying next to him, and he was holding his hand crying. And so as we stopped the truck a little bit back, and I ran to him, and as I was running to him, then I hollered to the other worker. I said, "Is he still breathing?" And he said, "Just barely." And it was just the most frightening thing I've ever felt in my life, and the most helpless thing, because I couldn't get the tractor off of him. We give God the credit. God saved our son. He absolutely did. And that day on the way to the field, my husband and I prayed, and we prayed that God's will be done, and if it wasn't what he wanted, that he would send people to help us. And so that gave us a lot of comfort, just in giving it over to him.
I told the guy, I told him that he had to get it off of me because I couldn't hardly breathe. It was a lot of pressure. And so he backed the other tractor up underneath of it, and tried lifting it off of me, and slid the hay fork underneath of it to lift it off of me, and it just reared the other tractor up. It wouldn't budge it. And so then whenever they got there, then my dad had a handyman jack in the back of his truck, and those jacks, they're not really made to lift anything heavy, and so we don't see how that thing lifted the tractor.
When we got to him that day, we knew as adults that we shouldn't pull him out from under that tractor. But when we saw him there fighting for his last breath, and he was already ashen, and when we got to him, it was all he could do to open his eyes. And he reached over and he took my hand and he said, "Mom, I love you." And he told me later he always wanted me to remember those were his last words. And then he told his dad the same thing. And I just told my husband, I said, we have to get him out from under here because he was struggling so much to breathe.
I'm just thankful to God that he's still here. See so many different accidents, and when we were in UK hospital, I think the day before somebody came in, tractor accident. The day after, I'm thinking, came in the same way, and neither one of them made it.
I've had 16 surgeries, 78 units of blood transfused. I have a plate and 4 pins in my pelvis. And my back was broken 3 spots, and my right shoulder blade, and my pelvis was crushed. And that's not even counting the internal. I mean, that was the worst, all the internal stuff, because they said that, like on the inside, that I was pretty much just cut in half. Well, I know most people will watch this video probably and say, well, it won't happen to me, but that's what I always said.
He's gonna go to school and get him a degree, and then says he still wants to come back and farm. So as long as he has a degree to fall back on, then farm will still be here, if that's what he wants.